All right. Hello and welcome. Brett here with clickmill.co. In this video, we are going to be in this training, this live church growth training. We're going to be talking about ministry strategy. Now, in past weeks, we've talked about the 5 steps Jesus goes through to grow his following, to grow the number of people that he's influencing in his ministry. We've talked about the 5 steps for growth. So we've been talking about a number of things. Now, in this week, you're welcome to go back and watch those. We'll have the link to those other videos or the sign up in the description here of the video. Either way, today we're going to be talking about ministry strategy. And I've got something pulled up here on my screen, and I'm going to be explaining this to you in real time. So give me 1 second here. Let's see. I'm just cleaning this up here just a little bit. There we go. Copy. There we go. Okay. Share my screen here. There we go. And one more. All right, there we go. I'm just cleaning this up just a little bit so we get the full effect. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let's get into ministry strategy. Okay, so you have a ministry. You're trying to reach people for the kingdom. And let me see if I can't zoom in here just a little bit. Okay, so here we go. We've got this guy right here. Now, this is the person that your ministry is supposed to be influencing and leading toward Christ, or discipling, or even selling a biblical product if you're, have a Christian business, or even a bookstore in your church or something to that effect. Now, so this we'll say follower, or your target audience. This is what we're going to call him. This is a representation of your target audience, the group, the flock, the herd that Jesus has called you to go and pursue. And so you have this individual's attention. Now, this individual is a representation of all of the people that you're reaching out to. And we'll say all of the people of a particular kind. And so I'm going to give an example. I really loved one particular ministry we worked with. I don't have, excuse me, I don't have favorites, but I really enjoyed working with one ministry in particular. And they discovered that their audience was inner city single moms. And you may have heard me, if you've watched and followed for any amount of time, you may have heard me talk about this. Well, we're trying to reach everybody. Know who you're really trying to reach? Well, we're trying to reach inner city single moms. All right. So we're reaching inner city single moms. All right. And what's the issue? Well, they're working 2 jobs. They're working 3 jobs. They don't have time with their kids. They're exhausted. They're lonely. They don't even have time to come to church. They're working Sundays. Okay. Well, how do we get to these ladies? How do you get to them? What do they need? What types of services can you offer them? And so, the goal then, well, I guess we'll build on that in a moment. So let's say this sort of inner city single moms is who we're talking to. When we're developing a strategy, we have to first and foremost have the vision. And we may have other lessons on vision later. We're going to keep it fairly simple for now. Vision is the view of the world after your ministry accomplishes its mission, after it goes through and knocks down all the barriers and creates this sort of new world. This is what the world looks like. Okay. So we're going to call that the vision. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take that out. So we have a vision here. Well, let's go here And let's talk about maybe a biblical vision. A biblical vision that we see in the Bible, let's say, is Moses and the burning bush. God speaks to Moses and he says, go over there to Pharaoh, say, Pharaoh, Pharaoh, let my people go. We've all heard that. And then when he lets them go, because that'll just happen, I want you to take them over to the promised land. And then listen to the vision. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. That's all he tells him. He says, here's step one, go to Pharaoh, and then take them over to the vision. Okay. He's like, that's terrifying. I'll probably die. And that's exactly what Pharaoh wanted to do. Pharaoh wanted to kill him. But the vision here is what grounds your audience. It's what grounds the people God has called you to reach out to and makes it worth it for them to follow you. Okay. So the vision was milk, land flowing with milk and honey. Okay. What does this mean to slaves? If you said this to a bunch of people who are in servitude, they're going to say, okay, hold on. Milk means cows, fattiest, most delicious food. Okay. It's got lots of protein. We're going to be nourished. Furthermore, cows eat grass. Cows don't eat sand. They eat grass. So this means wherever we're going is going to be green. Oh, we're in the desert and we're going to go to a green land where cows are grazing and there's grass and there's presumably other types of fruit and, plants that produce food. I mean, this is what a green place looks like. So, wow. Okay. Milk. All right. So this is great. Well, what's honey? Bees are on flowers. Flowers and plants are green. I mean, obviously flowers aren't green, but the plants are green. The bees are around. The bees are making honey. This is sugar that also comes from a very lush land. Milk and honey means lush land with tons of food, fatty food, healthy food, sugary candy food. This is utopia. They're like, we're going to heaven. Milk and honey. Amazing. And so not only that, but I'm going to take you away from the servitude of Pharaoh. You are going to be free in this land that is your land flowing with milk and honey. Hold on. You're telling us that we're going to be free in this paradise with milk and honey and all the other things that come with that. I will do whatever you say. Get me out of this place. Let's go there. So you'll notice that this vision, okay, when we leave, and so this is the vision, is what does the world look like after we leave Pharaoh? Milk and honey. That's where we're going. That's what God told me to tell you. That's what Moses is saying. Now, why? Why do we need the vision first? The vision sets the destination. It says where we're going. But for starters, it has to be a powerful vision. Now, I hear a lot of people talking about, well, set a vision that's sort of reasonable and, that's practical and executable and, don't go over the top. Don't be crazy. And you know what? That's boring. Nobody, if you don't have a God-sized vision, you don't need God. If I just want to have a couple clients here at ClickMail, big deal. I can help a couple people, make a buck, and pay for my family. That's great. I don't want to do that. I want a God-sized vision. I want to teach ministry leaders, thousands and thousands of them the world over. I want to teach them how to reach more people. And so I need God in my vision because he is the only one capable of doing the impossible. Well, when you have a vision that size, your audience begins to realize, oh, well, I want a vision that size too. I want to be in the land flowing of milk and honey. And that means I have to participate. See, I cannot be the ministry leader that does all of the growth things. That's not what God has called me to do. God has called me to share this information with other ministry leaders. And that means you have to participate. You've got to be a part of this vision to reach the world, reach your community more effectively than you're doing now. I can't do it by myself. It's impossible. And those are the visions that I like. And the reason why I like them, not only because I think when you reach the end of yourself, God shows up, you know, what happened when Moses went and said, Pharaoh, let my people go? He said no. And then what? God showed up and he cursed the land and he put all the curses on him. Okay. So when we reach the end of ourself, God shows up. Well, I want God hanging around. So I better be at the edge of myself as much as I can possibly be. Furthermore, though, when you reach the edge of yourself is when you're living at your potential. It's when you're living. That's when people get passionate. And an example from a book I read once was, if you want me to take a vacation for 2 weeks and I'm supposed to plan a trip, what the world would say is, well, plan a reasonable trip. Don't go crazy, budget and go see, I don't know, family or grandma, in the next state over, a couple hours away. That's reasonable. Anybody can do that. And you know what? Nobody does that because it's boring. Nobody wants to spend the year putting money away and budgeting and restraining their finances so that they can afford a $1,000, $2,000 2-week trip to grandma's. I'd rather just eat Taco Bell today. I love Taco Bell, by the way. That is my vice. Nobody wants to do that. It's not worth it. The weight of the vision going to grandma's after a year of saving, it's not worth it. But if you told me, I got to go to, I don't know, Cambodia on a 2-week mission to work with a trafficking agency and save lives. I don't care if it costs $15,000. I will run through walls. I will knock over any obstacle to do that because that is meaningful to me. Well, here, the Israelites have a land flowing with milk and honey. Presumably, they will knock over walls. They will face death to do that. And of course, they do, because when Pharaoh actually does let them go, God shows up. They reach the edge of themselves. Pharaoh's like, they're not leaving. God shows up. He curses and goes through the 10 plagues. And then what? Then they actually have the courage to leave. And what happens? Pharaoh chases them and is going to kill them or recapture them, something to that effect. So the vision inspires people to move. The bigger the vision, the more passion the people around you are going to have. So 2 things happen. God shows up when you have an impossible vision, and people show up when you have an impossible vision. And that is something that sort of these normal people, not normal people, just sort of your everyday run-of-the-mill church growth wisdom, ministry growth wisdom is like, we'll make reasonable goals. Reasonable goals make you grow so much slower. Impossible goals make you grow much faster. So I think this is really summed up in the shoot for the stars. And if you hit the moon, good for you. Like, if you hit the moon, you got further than pretty much everybody else. Yeah, you missed the stars. You missed your goal by 1,000,000 miles, but you still hit the moon. That is a huge success. If you get to heaven and you meet Jesus and he says, what'd you do with your time? And you're like, man, I shot for the stars. I went 100% and I hit the moon. Well done, my good and faithful servant. What is the alternative? Well, I didn't want to risk too much. And so, I just sort of did what I thought was reasonable. I don't want to have that answer. That's not something that I feel personally is a good answer. So coming back around to ministry strategy and vision, I recommend you set an impossible vision, and the attitude that you take in approaching that vision is, we don't have what it takes. And what I mean by that is when you're talking to these guys down here, right? Your audience that God's called you to, you say, listen, we can't do this by ourselves. We have to have you. The ministry team, we can't do it. We are going to shoot at that vision. And like Moses, listen, we got to depend on God because getting over there is impossible. So we're going to depend on God. And listen, I'm going to be the first one to stick my neck out. And if it means I die doing it, so be it. That is where God has called us to go. And that is what we are 100% dedicated to. And if we fail, we're failing together. When people actually hear that and then they see you back it up, they actually start feeling hope. They feel like there's a purpose, that we're actually doing something. Okay, so I recommend you have a big vision. Now, coming backward, what do they do? Because usually the ministry leader, the pastor, the business owner is the visionary. The vision God has given me is to help ministry leaders, 10,000 of them, reach their audiences more effectively. Okay, well, what does the ministry leader do? What does your audience do? What do the Israelites in this case do? They don't see the big picture in the same way that the leader as the visionary does. That's a unique skill that you have. So you say the vision all the time. You live it, you embody it. You say, listen, I'm going here and I don't care if you're with me or not. It's going to happen. And that's operating on faith. Well, what they do is they take step one. And so what does Moses do? Well, firstly, I think God gives Moses step one, which is go over to Pharaoh and say, Pharaoh, let my people go. Okay, so this is step one. So let's go ahead and go here. Action step one. We're going to delete this for now. Okay, action step one. So in the case of Moses, his first step was go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Now, in the case of Moses talking to the Israelites, he's saying step one is, look, guys, just follow me out of here. They're like, you're crazy. No way. Right. And then finally, Pharaoh's like, all right, you can go. And they're like, all right, quick, let's get out of here. Now, you'll notice here that when God at the burning bush, you're welcome to go look up the passage, because I read this and I was like amazed, because when you talk about strategy, this is and I love strategy. I spent a solid 6 months reading books on strategy. My strategy self is all those books right up there. When you read strategy, the strategist will rarely, if ever, reveal the full strategy, because it's too much for other people to think through, usually, and it's overwhelming. And think about this. If Moses knew all of the things that he would have to go through, he could barely get his head around, I'm going to take you to the land flow of milk and honey. That's great. Go and talk to Pharaoh. Whoa. Listen, man, I'm not good at talking and he's good at talking. Send him and I'm out. That's the one thing. What if he said, go talk to Pharaoh. The army's probably going to kill you after Pharaoh probably kills you. You're probably going to get stuck at the Red Sea and die. If you get through the Red Sea, you're going to starve in the wilderness for 40 years. And like, if he told him all that stuff, his head would just blow up. There's no way he could comprehend or deal with all of that pain all at the same time. And this is the same with our own lives. In our own lives, God, through the Holy Spirit, just tells us the next step. Just do this. And it's like, man, that is a hard thing to do. Just do that. And when we follow, what happens? He gives us the next step, because it takes the pain and the suffering and reduces it, right? Dying to your flesh, it reduces it down to a manageable amount. So even in our own life, God has a strategy. God already knows all the steps you have to go through. He's giving them to you one at a time. What does God do with Moses at the burning bush? Does he say, all right, go to Pharaoh, tell him, let my people go, probably die at the Red Sea, probably die in the wilderness, probably die fighting the giants, and then you'll have, the milk and honey? He doesn't say any of that stuff. He says, here's the vision, here's step one. In your ministry, in your church, in your business, what you want to do is you want to say, here's step one. Just do this thing. Just show up to this. Just make this call. Just take this one manageable action. Okay. And then what do we do as we are developing our strategy? Because the goal here is that you are the strategist. You can see God talking to Moses in the burning bush. He already knows the whole thing. But what does he tell him? He only tells him, go and talk to Pharaoh. He didn't give him the rest. Now, what happens? The rest is revealed to Moses as he is going through. There's a whole plan already in place. Action step two. Oh, I'm giving away the game here. Action step two. Okay. So action step 2 is, okay, Moses, now they're leaving. Now you got to have faith at the Red Sea and put your staff in there, part the waters. Are you probably going to die? You're probably going to die, but have faith and go through that step. And then you get to the wilderness. What's the wilderness? Oh, well, the wilderness is where the serpents are going to try to kill you, and you're not going to have enough food, presumably, and you're going to be lost. Well, what happens as they have faith in the wilderness? Well, they're healed of the serpents. They're provided manna from heaven. They have a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. They're at the edge of themselves. What happens? God shows up. Okay, you get to the promised land. What happens? Have faith that I will give you victory over these giants. However you want to interpret that verse. They are a massive force to be dealt with. And the first round of these Israelites did not have the faith. And what happened? Back to the wilderness, back to the last step of the plan, until you're all gone and people with faith can take the next step. And what happens? Well, then Joshua goes into the promised land, says, nope, we can do it. They go to war, they go. I may have just messed up that story, but either way, you know what I'm saying? The next generation goes in, God gives them victory over the whole land. And what happens? They have the vision. Now, what you'll notice at each of these steps is that there is a tremendous sacrifice that is required to get there. Go to Pharaoh and probably die. Go to the Red Sea and probably get stuck. Go to the wilderness and probably, starve. Whatever happens in the wilderness, bake and get a sunburn and get skin cancer. I don't know. Fight the giants and probably get smashed under their toes or whatever. And then have the vision. This vision at every step needs to be powerful enough to have your audience risk whatever the risk is. In this case, death, 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 and death. Now, this isn't to say that your ministry needs to have people reach death, but the reason why people don't do the hard thing is because your audience, typically not the visionary, not the big strategist, they're just looking at this step and they're just looking at this and they're going, man, that's hard. Why would I do that? That's crazy. Why would I sacrifice, that part of my flesh? I love that part. Well, it's because you're going over there. You're going to the vision. Oh, wait, so you're telling me if I lose this, then I get that? Well, okay, I'll do that. And even then we see it's a struggle. The Israelites throughout the whole journey are complaining and are fearful. And isn't that the case with our own life? In order to get anywhere worth going, you have to sacrifice. And in order to sacrifice, you have to be going somewhere worthwhile. And so in your ministry strategy, the goal is to figure out where you have your audience going. Now, in the case of these, coming backwards to a real life example, the single moms, okay, inner city single moms, what is the vision? And we went through this with the ministry leaders at this church in somewhere in the Northeast US, I forget what state, but I said, what's your milk and honey? And what they said after a week of considering it and thinking about it and praying about it is they say, well, we feel God is leading us to help these inner city single moms have healthy, whole families. We want them to have relationships with their kids. We want them to have the finances that they need. We want them to have the communication and relationship skills to have a healthy marriage and to have a man in the family who is a godly man, presumably also through their church, which is almost like their church is almost a matchmaker. They're like, our goal is to get the men in our church prepared to have wives and to be godly men. And that it is to get the single moms prepared to have a godly husband. And that solves the loneliness in their lives. And so they're really coming together to meet the needs of this community. Well, okay, what's step one? And now I don't remember all the steps. It's been over a year since we worked with this ministry, but let's just say, well, step one is to go and find these ladies. Where are they? And we talked and we said, well, where? Well, they're not in church. Their jobs are spread around all over the place. They're working, minimum wage jobs at any number of places. So you can't really go hunt them down in their jobs. They're not at the park with other moms because, well, presumably the parks really aren't safe in this particular area of town. But even if they were, these moms would be working. They're working all the time. Where's the place that they go? Daycare. That's the only place that you're going to be able to find all these single moms. So we say, number one, action step one for ministries is you go over to the daycares, you talk to the daycares and you say, what's your biggest problem? How can we serve you? And then you get in good standing with the daycares in your community and you say, how can we bless your clients, the single moms? And, hey, maybe you overlap and you get some married moms too. Great. Doesn't matter. And you come up with a winning strategy so that the daycare is the greatest daycare ever to their clients, these single moms. And the single moms get something out of it. A night off, a ladies' night at the church where childcare is provided. I don't know what it is. You bring in whatever kind of food these ladies like, and you let them kick their feet up. Bring in someone that gives a massage. Like, I don't know. Create a win where the moms are and say, hey, if this looks great, come on over here. And from there, the moms come to church. So the step one is, mom, come over to church. We've got a treat for you. And then action step two is, if you loved this, if you thought this was good, we've got something even better. What is that step? Well, hey, we know you're struggling in your finances. We want to give you job skills training. Now, we know your schedule is tight, so we're going to make this available online, but also we're going to do it live. We're going to have people in here giving you skills so that you can actually add skills to your resume and work jobs that pays more so you don't have to work so many hours and get more time with your kids. You think they'll show up to that? Yeah, I think they'll show up to that. As you get them involved in this, you can see we have crafted step by step all the way to healthy, whole families. Now, what happens as you start to get your first couple single moms who are, let's say, married to godly men? Their finances are more stable. They have more time with their kids. Their kids are healthier. What are they going to do? Listen, why don't you guys come back and pour into the moms who are coming through the program now? You think they'd do that? I bet they would do that. And so you begin to develop this strategy. Now, does the mom, let's say this is mom, does she know all of these steps and all of the sacrifices that are going to be required to get here? Absolutely not. And she doesn't need to know. She needs to know step one. And so that's why I kind of say here, all of those sort of white out areas, we don't show her all of the steps. She sees steps one, and it's just show up to, get a night off. We got massages for mom. We got childcare for kids. Just show up and we're going to give you a night off. And during that night off, you're pouring into her. And this does not mean a super duper gospel presentation. They've already heard that. And if they haven't, they don't understand the spiritual need. They can't hear the spiritual need when their earthly terrestrial needs are unmet. When they're lonely, when they're broke, when they're exhausted, when their kids are a mess, they can't hear you talk about Jesus. When you start meeting those needs, their heart says, boy, these people really care about me. And then they can hear you talk about Jesus. This is why in the New Testament, I'm also filming today. So jumping around a little bit, I'm also filming today a free 5-day church growth Bible study. And day 3 that I just filmed is verse after verse after verse of how Jesus meets the needs, the terrestrial or earthly needs, not worldly, that has a sinful implication, but earthly food. Here in Luke 5:1-11, he's talking to the fishermen. He gives fish to fishermen. He doesn't preach to them. He gives them fish. Coming over here, let's consider this passage. He feeds the 5,000. It doesn't say that he preached to them in Matthew 14. It says he fed them. They were hungry. He gave hungry people food. And on it goes down to the bottom where it says Jesus actually just says to the crowd, you're not even following me for the signs and the wonders. You're just following me because I gave you food. He gave hungry people food and they followed him. When you meet the needs, see if I can find where we're at here. Oh, I deleted it. Come on. There we go. When you meet the needs, successive needs of the people in your audience, they will come to you. People go where if you don't take anything else away from this whole meeting, take this. People go where their needs are met, and they stay where their needs are met consistently. When you go to wherever your audience is, you find them and you offer to meet a deeply felt need. Come for a single mom's night off. The kids have got stuff to do. You're going to get it's going to be great. We're meeting your needs. Don't whack them with the Bible. Meet another need. The more needs you meet, the more committed they will be to coming back. Now, that's not to say you can't meet a big need and say, listen, guys, the reason why we're giving you a night off is because, we believe that Jesus gives us a break too, except he gives us a break, not from work, but works for salvation. You see how we can tie that in and pull that over directly. And they're like, oh my gosh, I need a break from work. But yeah, I need a break from trying to work myself into heaven. I get that. So, Jesus pays for me. Okay, so that's totally fine. But what do we do when we invite them? Don't invite them to church on Sunday. They can't come to church on Sunday. Invite them to the next deeper need. Okay, this was the night off. Well, what we're going to do next is job skills training. You get them in job skills training and you say, listen, these are the things you got to do to develop this skill, this skill, this skill. You go through that with them. They're building the job skills. What's the next thing? You want a healthy whole family, right? We're pitching that vision all the time. Here's step 3. You've got job skills. You've got a better job. Now we need to talk about healthy relationship skills. Look, we've got a biblical counselor coming in. This is how to communicate. This is what a relationship of abundance is supposed to look like. Yeah, I know you grew up in this junk. That's not how it's supposed to look. Here's how it's supposed to look. Here's how we're supposed to say things. Here's how we're supposed to communicate love. That's going to help them with their kids. That's going to help them in a future potential marriage relationship. And on we go up the steps that you have pre-planned until they're at the vision. And when they reach that vision, they're going to say, how can I serve you? My goodness. And we've had ministries that do this. I've had one ministry that when I was working with them, I'm always just kind of assessing, well, what's the issue? What's your problem? How can I take you on your journey? And I said, okay, well, what about volunteers? This was a women's, a thrift store with a church. And this thrift store got women out of the adult entertainment industry. And these women are on drugs. These women are doing all kinds of, just really rough stuff because they could not pay the bills and, whatever. They got drug into this stuff when they were young. And so it was freeing women who are ready to get out of this industry and giving them job skills and many of the things that I'm telling you. Well, they have a thrift store. And I said, all right, well, you're providing clothes for these women who don't have a lot of money so that they're not as dependent, on this type of work. Their kids can have clothes, they can have clothes, and man, they really help these women. But either way, I said, okay, well, what about volunteers? How are you doing on volunteers with the thrift store and with these other things? No, we got plenty of volunteers. We don't need that. What do you mean you don't need volunteers? We have so many volunteers. We have to close the volunteer gates. We have so many of them. We have to turn them away. What are you doing they have to turn volunteers away? Well, after the women come through, the women from the adult entertainment industry come through and they get the clothes for their kids. And, we kind of share with them a little bit about what we do and why we do it. That's where they kind of drop in, the spiritual message about Jesus. Well, we meet their needs and then the volunteers get to take what's left because we don't have anything left. So they just split it up between them. They go through, they get to shop, and then we try to minimize. And they get so many donations every week because their vision is so powerful. We don't want any women in the adult entertainment industry. This town is not going to have any of those workers. People are donating them stuff left and right. They don't even have space for it. So they got to give it to the volunteers. You know who's volunteering? The women who are in the adult entertainment industry and are working on getting out and are getting out. Those are the women that are volunteering. When you meet needs, people show up. They just keep showing up. So this is the strategy. And we reveal the strategy one step after the next. And you can do this for anything. I did this for you on the way into this training, this weekly training. How do we do it first? Well, I know that ministry leaders like yourself are on Google, they're on YouTube, you're on YouTube, and you're looking up things like women's ministry events. Sound familiar? Men's ministry event ideas, women's how to grow a church growth strategies, any number of different things. I know you're looking for those. So what do? We create articles, we create videos, we put them out on those platforms. We're going out to you, just like in this case, this ministry went out to the single moms. And we go out to you. You're searching in Google. That's not my website. You find a listing that says, 104 sermon topic ideas. And you're like, oh, I was looking for sermon topics. You come into the article. You're scrolling, and what do you see? Join our live weekly Bible study. Something to that effect. Download your free blank. You download that. You'll notice this is the plan. I find you on Google. You come into the website. You're reading the article. That's step 2. So we can see here. We can actually write this in. This is, I'll give away our strategy here, right? So Google, we show up on Google. We get a user on the website, which would have at some point been you. And then we get what's called a conversion. This is not a biblical, I'm accepting Jesus, though it could be. This is, I got a name and email from a user, and then they get a free 5-day Bible study. This is what's coming up next. This is what we're going to be testing. I will gladly give this to you for free since you're already in here. This is, let me meet your need for church growth. That's what people are in. That's what you're here for. So we're going to see if we can't give away a free 5-day Bible study. And in that Bible study, let me come over here. In that Bible study, hey, if you loved this Bible study, this is a call to action. This is what we talked about when one of the 5 steps that Jesus used to influence, the last step. If you loved this free 5-day Bible study, look, we do something just like this every single week. It's live. Get your first month free. Whatever it is I got to say, come on in. Let's go. That's one of the ways we're going to be trying to grow this group, by giving them something that meets the same need through the conversion. And then what we're going to say, this would be our desired action step. So this is the big action. This is the marry me. And usually, at least in business, because we're a marketplace ministry, we're a Christian business, people have to pay for something. This is just sign up right now. It's $50 a month. Let's do this. Come on in. It's going to be worth it. And then what happens? They do it. Well, in ministry, in church, this would be donate. And you know how hard it is to get people to donate. And so we can like to think all day long that, people just donate because they sacrifice to the Lord, except that doesn't work. And not only that, people may be willing to, I tithe, and I'm going to tithe where I go to church. If a church does not meet my needs, I'm just not going to go there. I'm going to go to a different church, and I'm going to sacrifice to the Lord there. So you have to meet needs in your ministry, and each step should be an earthly need. And each earthly need should move them closer to that relationship with Jesus. Oh, you're coming to, how do we say this? For the single moms, you go and you're blessing them with a night off. Oh boy, you're giving fish to fishermen. You're giving a night off to a single mom. And in that, hey, we want to give you a night off because, work is really, really rough. And also, God has given us the ability to stop working. And what we mean is working for salvation. We don't have to do it anymore. Jesus did it. Done deal. You met a need. You gave the spiritual sort of parallel action step to it. If you love this, we've got something even better. We're not going to give you a night off. We're going to give you skills to get a better job, so that you can work less hours, so that you can have more time with your family. You can have a healthy whole family. Well, why do we do this? Well, and so you can see, because Christ has given us the healthiest, the wholest family. And we know what it is, and we want you to have that too. And that is represented in your family. Okay, so each step moves us closer to a relationship with God. Each step moves us closer to this vision that God has called you to help your ministry reach. But each step moves them also closer in relationship with God. But you have to meet the need, the earthly need, until they fully understand that kingdom need, the need for Jesus. And, in your audience, maybe it's like, one mom's night off, and they're so grateful they all accept Jesus and they're in. They're like, I'm coming to church on Sunday, every Sunday, because you guys love me and God loves me. And sure, maybe. But maybe it takes mom's night off. Maybe then it takes mom's job skills. Maybe then it takes, mom having a loving relationship with, stepdad, who's a real godly influence in the family. Maybe she's got to get all the way to healthy whole family in order to understand what a healthy whole relationship with God looks like. It just parallels the relationship toward God. And so the goal at the end, the last step is, look, you have a healthy whole family. We're still missing one thing. The reason we did this whole thing is because it's just a reflection of our relationship with Christ. We have a healthy whole relationship with God. And that's the final step to the vision of a healthy whole family. And then, boom. And this is exactly what we see Jesus do in the New Testament with his strategy. He goes, he sees fishermen. What do they need? Fish. It's morning. They've got no fish. And he goes and he gives them fish. And then what does he do after he gives them the fish? He says, follow me, call to action, and I will make you fishers of men. That is the transition to the spiritual. And what happens? They leave all the fish, 2 giant boatloads of fish. It says they were shocked. The boats were sinking. They'd never seen anything like that. One guy drops down and says, Lord, I'm not worthy. And what do? They got a fortune of fish in the boats. They just leave the boats. They just say, well, forget that. This guy says he's got something better. I'm not going to fish for fish. I'm going to fish for people. I don't even know what that means. Some kind of spiritual people fishing, but I'm going with him. Forget those fish. That's what happens when we meet the earthly need in our strategy and build it to the spiritual need and shift it over in a way they can understand. And so this is what I want to leave with you today. And the last thing that I want to go through is I want to compare and contrast this with what most ministries are doing. And I would first like to do one thing here just to kind of show this. Here we go. I'm going to make this white here real quick. I want to just kind of illustrate here. When you're doing your kind of revealing of steps, the first thing you're revealing is step 1. No, excuse me, the vision. Hey, single mom, this is where we're going. Land flowing with milk and honey. Healthy whole family. Come with us. It's going to be tough, but you're going to have a healthy whole family. Moses, guys, just follow me out of here. We're going to the land flowing with milk and honey. That's what I'm saying to you. Guys, let's go. Just follow me. We're going to have ministries that reach our communities. We're going to see growth. Doesn't matter what it takes. That's where we're going. Okay. And then they go, okay, we're with you. What do we do? Step 1. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. Hopefully step 1 isn't always super duper hard to really get them engaged, but sometimes it is. It's really hard. Oh my gosh, but you can do it. Just leave the town. And then what happens? That's all they see. That's all they can see. And then they go, okay, I'm going to do it. And they climb that obstacle and they come up here. They go, oh my gosh. Okay. Are we at the vision? Well, we got to go to the next step. What? Listen, we're going to the land flowing with milk and honey. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Next step's harder, but we can do it. We're going to do it. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to go up here. And what is that? Well, you've got to cross the Red Sea. Yeah, I know. Pharaoh's army's coming in behind you. There's walls of water. You just got to walk. Oh my gosh, we're going to die in there, but let's do it. Okay. And then what do? They do it. Some of them, not all of them will, but some of them do. And this is the journey of faith. And this is what it means when it says we do not fight as though boxing the air. We do not run. We run as though we're running a real race. It's exhausting. It's tiring. It's going to be hard. And God's going to get us there. And that's the pitch. That's the way that we have to say this to our audience. And then what? Well, it's going to be hard. And then we're going to go to this step. Yep. Now we went from the promised land. Now we're going to go in the desert. Oh, we're going to die in there. Oh my gosh, the serpents and we're going to get lost and there's no food and there's no water and we're toast. Right. We're going to do it. God's going to get us through. And so here's what happens. One step at a time, they take on this monumental task to get to the hardest possible place, which is the best place. And you reveal the strategy one point at a time. But this means that you have to be the strategist, and you have to talk to God, the ultimate strategist. And you have to say, what steps do these people need to go through to get to the place that you've called me to take them? What are the steps? And just look in your ministry and say, who's gotten there? Go talk to them. Say, how did you get here? What were the steps you went through? If you've got 5 of those people, go and take notes. Sit down with each one of them and say, what are the exact steps that God took you through to get here? Because we're going to put those in our church. And then you go talk to all 5 of them and you compare and you say, what are the common steps? And that is your ministry strategy working theory. And you start testing those steps. So I've given you the steps that we came to as a starting point with the ministry we worked with for single moms, or at least some of them. Are those exactly the perfect working steps? Don't know till you test them. And you see what works, you see what creates fruit in these ladies' lives or in the lives of the people God's called you to, and then you tweak those steps until they're perfect. That is what we're doing right now for this service in ClickMail. This is a new service. I do consulting at $150 an hour. We do all kinds of super expensive marketing services, and I feel God telling me, no, take the same level of training and take it to the masses and do it for way less money and give them more. Well, how do we do that? How do we get people from blogs and YouTube videos in here? We're testing. We're creating a theory. Well, we've got to go to Google. We've got to go to YouTube. We've got to meet their need and invite them to the website. And then we've got to get them some sort of an offer to get them in the door for free. And then from that, when we meet that bigger need, then we get them in here to the weekly Bible study. And this is where we do the work required to get to your vision. And so all of that coming back around, you have to put together a theory, your best theory, based on the feedback of the people who've already walked this trail. Usually you have walked this path. That's why you're ministering to people on this path. So you put together 3, 4, 5 steps that get them to the vision. And then you start testing those with real people and seeing if they go through it. And you just optimize and you tweak them until you have a steady stream of people going through those steps. Now, I want to do what I said we were going to do, and that is, let's look at how most ministries do this. And you'll notice it's totally different. And we're going to pull it into web design because you can just see this on websites. This is what most ministries do in regard to strategy. And this is not strategy, but this is what we do. We say to our audience, well, who's our audience? We don't even know who they are. It's not single moms, single inner city moms. This is just everybody. When we try to talk to everybody, we can't reasonably tell them to do anything because everybody needs to do something different. So we just say, do all the things. And this is what we see on websites. When I work on ministry websites, sometimes there'll be no calls to action, no buttons on things to do. That's very rare. It can happen, but it's rare. That's more common with businesses. On ministry websites, we're so desperate to get people engaged. I mean, you can just see it on the websites, the desperation. Do this, do that. No, but do this and do that. And I was on a website yesterday with a client and they had 36 calls to action. Think about that, 36. That's not a strategy. That is just shouting at the top of your lungs for someone to hear you because you're trying to do something important. And we've got to do better than that. That is, Jesus says, follow me. That's his call to action. And his promise is the vision, I'll make you fishers of men. Moses said, follow me out of Israel. And we're going to the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey. Simple, 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 simple. What we do is we have no vision. We don't know where we're going because we're going everywhere because we just want people. I'm working with a ministry recently and they say they're a missions organization. They're a missions ministry, missions focused, missions. They say it all the time. And you know what? I've never seen them do anything with missions. I've never seen fundraising. I've never seen missions classes. I've never seen missions planning. I haven't seen anything with missions, but they have all kinds of ministries related to everything except missions. Are they a missions ministry or are they not? I don't know. But the strategy is not clear because they say over here they're supposed to be missions, but there's no pathway to get to missions. So it's very confusing. And this is something that I've consulted on them with because the audience is also confused. Now, what happens is when we give the audience all of these different choices and we just sort of cram them all down there and say, just do something, the audience is responsible now for creating where they believe they're going. And that is how we get disunity, because we have not clearly communicated where the church is going and where we're taking the flock, or where the ministry is going and where the following is going. So they make it up themselves. And one person says, well, we're going to the homeless. We have a homeless ministry, right? And another one's like, well, no, the mission says that we're doing missions. We're going to Zambia. And someone else is like, well, no, we're supposed to be witnessing in our, in our workplaces, because that's what Pastor so-and-so said. Nobody knows where we're going. And so we get disunity, and then we become ineffective and we can't go anywhere. And this is so apparent on websites. So I would encourage you, after this call, go on your website and see how the website reflects your strategy, because I can almost guarantee you'll be like, oh, this looks like we don't have any strategy. And really, it's probably because we're not 100% clear on the strategy. So to that end, what does our website say? It says, join us for service, join us online, give today, look at us on Facebook, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, go to YouTube, join us for Bible study, all night prayer, men's group, women's group, bulletin. And it's like, imagine that. Imagine Jesus saying, follow me. He gives fish to the fishermen. Let's just assume we know how to meet the need. We give fish to the fishermen, and then we say, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. And follow me to Bible study and Sunday morning worship, online and offline, and give to my ministry, and come to Facebook and follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And on it goes. The disciples are not going to follow him, right? He gave them one option. So I'm pointing at the screen here. He gave them one option. And let's just say it's this one. Do this. Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. Okay, I can do that. That's clear. And I know where we're going. Fishers of men. Wow. Ooh, that's a big deal. That sounds like something that's worth going for. I'm going to leave everything and do that. Well, what if he just said, boom, do all these things? But what do you want me to do? I don't understand. How do I follow you over here and follow you over there and follow you up here and follow you down there? Where are we going? Right? If you heard someone say that in real life, you'd be like, I think this person has a problem. Let's get away. Let's go over here. And so this is what so many ministries do. They fail to have a strategy that is reasonable and takes people to a very specific end. And we have all of this other stuff that's noise, and it confuses people. And then they cannot get to where you want them to go because we're giving them too many options. One option is hard enough, because doing anything God tells us to do is going to be a sacrifice. We are going to have to sacrifice something to follow the Lord. And, whatever that is, giving up a fleshly desire, getting over an addiction, even just reading the Bible, right? The flesh hates reading the Bible. And people don't want to do that. So just taking one step is hard enough. But when you say take one step and also here's 13 other steps, and you're asking them to figure out which step is the right step, it's never going to happen. So I hope today is useful for you. You want to have a hyper clear strategy that looks like this, and it gets more clear with time as people go through and you prove the concept of the initial theory. Ask your audience that is at the vision that God's calling your ministry to take people to. Ask people who are there. How'd you get there? Ask them all. Write down the process. Now, I'm going to give you one additional point of encouragement. We've got just a couple minutes left here. And that is this. So many ministry leaders are overwhelmed. And burning out. And I had this experience in ministry too, because we're doing so many things. And the reality is that you can do 100 things. You can run Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and film YouTube videos and sermons and run a website and have 37 different, outreaches and, weekly Bible studies and sermons and women's groups and men's groups and kids groups and youth groups. And you can do all of the things and get no growth. And you can probably relate with that. Why does that happen? Because growth happens when people are going toward a vision, and this goes nowhere. So you can have 100 things with a not ministry strategy, I'm referencing the title here, and get no growth and be exhausted. Or you can prune, and we'll talk about pruning more in another day. You can cut off 80% of this junk. It's good stuff. I'm not saying it's not good stuff, but what I'm saying is it's not the right stuff. If God called you to pursue a particular group, inner city women's ministry, inner city single moms, and that's who you're supposed to bring to the Lord, you don't need a surfing ministry. Why are we doing that? It might be a good thing, and it's completely irrelevant to the vision and the call that God has on your ministry. Cut it, burn it. You know, if it does not produce fruit, you cut it off and you burn it in the fire. That is what God does to us. So it's like you should certainly do that to parts of your ministry that are not leading to the place where God has called you to lead your audience. And so what does that mean? All of these things that are bunched up down here, get rid of all of them, except for what is absolutely necessary and most effective that produces fruit toward your vision. And what this means is, and this is where I'm closing, you don't have to do as much stuff. You don't have to do as much stuff. It will be a relief. You can systematize the whole thing. And this isn't even just my opinion. I just finished here, this book. This is It. And It is by Craig Groeschel, who is the leader of, I want to say, somewhere around 50 churches now, many of which are mega ministries. I did not get this idea from him, but I just read him saying exactly the same thing. When he had something like 26 ministries, many of which were mega churches, not to say that that's the goal, but just to say he has growth. He has the fruit that we're talking about. That's why he's credible. When he was doing 26 churches, in all 26 of them, they had 4 ministries. They tried Bible studies, cut them, burned them in the fire. They tried all kinds of things, and they only had 4 things. And that is what all the campuses were revolving around, was those 4 things. Can you imagine leading 26 uber, super duper, successful churches? They're building the kingdom. That's what I mean by success. They're building the kingdom. They're creating a difference in heaven. Angels are rejoicing because people are coming to God, and they only do 4 things. You would have time to sleep at night. The stress would just evaporate. And now, would it still be stressful? Of course, but not like it is when we're trying to do everything for everyone. And so you can get better fruit and do less work. And that's what we do when we prune the vine. We're doing less work because we're not trying to nourish all of these dead branches that we're not supposed to have anyway. We cut them off, we throw them into the fire, and the resources and the energy that the church does has, that your ministry does have, flows through to the most productive branches. And that would be these ministries specifically and in progression. And you will see more people going through your strategic process. So this is ministry strategy. I hope this is helpful for you. And this brings us to the end of this training on strategy. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you being here in this group. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next week. God bless. Oh my God, did I just film a whole mother freaking